man, my brain isn't working tonight.
What's wrong?
I don't know. I just took a nap before the podcast, and I've woken up and I've got this weird brain fog going, and now I can't even remember like who I am or anything.
Oh, no.
I don't know.
Are you going to make it through the next 3 hours here?
I'm not sure. It's going to be an adventure.
You have some kind of seasonal affective disorder?
No, it's just, I don't know. I just kind of prematurely woke up, I think. And I think my brain hasn't caught up with my body yet. So we'll see. Maybe I'll be a genius by the time we get to the jazz section. We'll see.
Well, it really feels like summer here now. And it's been sunny and nice, still dry.
Yeah.
In Western Japan here, which won't last for long. It will soon be wet and soggy music listening season, which is the best thing to do in the rainy season.
You just win both ways, really. You're either outside or you're kind of listening to music. It's a good thing. So I think we found an ideal place for us, let's say.
Yeah. And that's how we spend most of our time in the antisocial pursuit of listening to music. Here at Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. This week is episode 259. I'm your co-host, Russ.
I'm your co-host, Mike.
Well, we had some nice feedback from last week, Mike. We heard from Joe Sirian in the Motor City Octet, and they enjoyed the episode and what we said about their recording. Also from Doug Beavers over at Circle 9 Records, where he was a member there. And if you're listening, Doug, we're going to do another Circle 9 recording next episode. So I'm looking forward to that. And we also heard from violinist Christina Prats-Costa.
Yeah, she was really great and sent us a nice comment. Thank you, Christina. That was really great. It's a great album, too.
Thanks to everyone for checking out that episode. And this week we've got a bunch more interesting music for you lined up. I'm pretty excited to talk about most of these recordings here.
I thought so, too.
Yeah, and we've got a program for next week already lined up, too. We could just listen forever and never talk to other people again.
That'd probably be a good idea tonight. I don't know why we're even recording this with me in this state, but I think I'll get through. I feel okay.
The music will pull you through.
I like the challenge.
Great. Okay, then we've got no bad news, no deaths or anything to report, so we'll move right along into the music. As always, in the episode description, you'll find links to Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music for all of the recordings we're going to discuss. And at the top of the description, there's a link to the full episode playlist. That's all the music in one place on Deezer, CD quality streaming music from France. Now, if you can't see the full description or if the recording list and links are hard to follow or access wherever you're listening to us now, you can always come over and check us out on our host site. That's Podbean, podbean.com. Everything's easy to follow there. If you enjoy the podcast, please follow or subscribe and tell a music-loving friend. Help us grow our audience. If you take a moment to give us a ranking or write a short review wherever you're listening to us, that also helps us get listed in the music category recommendations, and that's another way we can grow our audience. Come and follow us on our Facebook page as well. You can get extra info and some more new releases there. And if you'd like to contact us directly with any comments or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is adultmusicpodcast, that's all one word, @gmail.com. We'll be playing music samples as part of our discussion, and this is our fair use disclaimer. Music sample clips are for commentary and educational purposes. We recommend that listeners listen to the complete recordings, all of which are available on streaming services in the links provided. And we also suggest that if you enjoy the music, you consider purchasing the CDs or high-quality downloads to support the artists. High quality is what we like, but we're going to start low in this episode, Mike.
Well, at least not low in frequency, but in the Low Countries. Right. And the Low Countries refers to, I always think of it as Holland, but apparently Belgium as well is pretty low. Anyway, organ music from the Low Countries is our Baroque album of the week, and this is an album of organ music performed by Bernard Foccroulle on the Ricecar label, released May 1st. Now, the booklet notes have all sorts of interesting information on the organs used during the period of these compositions, which I'm not going to go into here because there's a lot of detail,
right.
And it's really for organ aficionados only, but it actually does help. I'll mention certain important things as they come up. I'm going to refer organ enthusiasts to the booklet. All of the organs that were played by the composer organists on the album have disappeared. So some beautiful examples of 17th century organ building in the southern Netherlands, however, have been preserved, and 3 of them are used on this recording. So that's what they mean, the Low Countries. These organs all come from the Netherlands, not necessarily the pieces and the composers. The three organs used on the album are the organ in the... Oh, man, I got to say these Dutch words, so bear with me, everybody. Sint Martinuskerk in Kwijg, and that's St. Martin's Church, I guess, in the Netherlands. We also have the organ of the Sint Jacobuskerk, the St. Jacob Church, I guess, Sint Truiden in Schuurhoven, Belgium, and the organ in the Sint Jan de Dopperkerk, Kirkus Church, Groot Beginhof, Leuven, Belgium. Okay, so just sound those out, everybody, and you'll be able to work out what I'm actually saying. Because I have like one or two Dutch friends, and they'll sometimes I'll say, "How do you say this word?" And they'll say it, and it doesn't look anything like
right.
the actual letters appearing on it. So you really have to know this language to be able to say it. So apologies.
It's a mysterious language to me.
Yeah, it's got all these really cool double vowels in it that I really like two A's together. I really think that's super cool.
We're going to hear some more of that in jazz later on.
Oh, cool. All right, so stay tuned, everybody. Make sure, hey, classical listeners, make sure you listen to the jazz section, too, because you should be listening to that, too, because it's good music.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, so can we start in Kwijg with the Sint Martinuskerk organ, I guess constructed by André Severin in circa 1650. Now, I have never been to the Netherlands, but I've been to Italy, and I've heard some of these very old organs in the churches in Italy, and boy, they are fantastic. Not spectacular big sounds, but they have this really almost intimate, sort of very personal sound to them. And these organs are sort of in that sort of area of tone. So I really enjoyed listening to this album for that reason. Okay, now the first piece on this album we're going to hear is by John Bull. He's an English composer. Salve Regina Misericordi. Bull was one of England's most admired musicians. His turbulent love life caused a scandal that caused him to flee the wrath of the Archbishop of Canterbury and King James I and leave England secretly in 1613. He sounds like an Italian composer.
Kind of like you, having to leave the States. And,
yeah, I had to leave the United States under similar circumstances, so here I am in Japan. You shouldn't have said that because now they're going to get wind of who I am. Anyway, he was immediately hired by Archduke Albert at the Brussels court, but the King of England's insistence that the Archduke dismiss him cut short his stay. He moved to Antwerp, where he became organist at the cathedral and remained there until his death in 1628. You know, I'm thinking we probably, with the way the internet moves today, we shouldn't even joke like that. You know?
Maybe not.
Yeah, because, you know, they could take it too seriously or something. Anyway, John Bull moved to Antwerp, became organist at the cathedral, and remained there until his death in 1628. This is his Salve Regina. This goes through different verses. This is tracks 1 through 7 on the album, all the same piece. Salve Regina, welcome Queen. This is a welcome to Queen Mary, the Queen of Heaven, of course, Jesus' mother. So this work starts with a trill, and this is a big church-filling sound, which is referred to in the notes and really in organ talk as the plein jeu, or the full, I guess, playing of the organ. And there are some odd harmonies in this movement, too, which just make it really spicy. And I like spicy food, and I like spicy music. So let's hear a little bit of this. Okay, we're not getting those spicy harmonies yet, but they come, I promise. This verse stays more or less like this for its 1 minute 37 second duration. Then we get to track 2, Ad te clamamus. To you we clamor. This shows off the rich bass sound of the instrument, and we get a cornet setting from the treble. Now, you'll remember from past podcasts, the cornet doesn't mean the brass trumpet instrument. It means like this curved sort of horn, and it's got a brassy sound, except that here it's an organ, so it's got a brassy organ sound. Let's hear a little bit of it. I don't really think of that cornet instrument as having a nasal sound. I think of it as more brassy, but it kind of sounds nasal to me on the organ. A little bit, yeah. Yeah, like you're singing through your nose or something. The rest has a soft woodwind sound to it. Track 3, Ea Ergo, here Foccroulle is showing off all of the sounds on the organ. Not in this movement, but in the entire work. Each movement uses different settings. There's some counterpoint between the right and left hands here, and the bass is set to a basse de trompette. So I guess a trumpet bass. Track 4, O Clemens. Soft woodwind playing here in this gentle section. We move to track 5, Pro Fine. Reeds and mixture stops in what would much later come to be known as a grand jeu. This has a wash of organ sound. Track 6, Prelude and Carol. Okay, this is Dutch again. Laat ons met herten Regina. Now I can tell Regina is Regina or Queen. This starts in woodwind style and is soft and gentle sounding. When the register changes after the tonic chord, the cornet appears in the right hand. So that's that kind of brassy nasal instrument, except that it's an organ here. And the cromhorn, which is a curved Renaissance double reed instrument, is heard in the left hand. This comes in at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and I want to hear that cromhorn, so let's hear that. So you're getting those stops changed very often in this piece, and it's pretty interesting to listen to. I really enjoyed the beginning of the part I sampled where you heard the cromhorn again in the left hand, and the cornet is in the right hand. So two different sort of brassy sounding instruments imitated by the organ there. By 3 minutes, and we got to that point at the end of that sample, the wind sound is in again, and this piece ends shortly after. I really love the wind sound on the organ, that really breathy kind of sound that comes out of the pipes. Track 7, Fantasia, on a theme from La Guamina. This begins with a quotation from a canzona by the Venetian composer Giuseppe Guami, and that's why it's called La Guamina. Following the Italian style, the first section is in duple time, followed by a section in triple time in which a solo line is played on a second manual. The polyphonic writing, however, is distinctly Nordic. It starts gently. The Italians never really got into counterpoint. That's really a German and northern thing. It's kind of funny. It starts gently with reedier sounds, then by the 1 minute and 50-second mark gets a gentler wind sound with a reed appearing with the melody. Let's hear a bit of that. Get out right before the cadence there. All right, when you hear a piece that's in the Italian style, you know it's going to be lively. I guess it's that Italian sunshine that does that to you. The piece itself is gentle, but Foccroulle's choice of stops makes it colorful. This is a really interesting track, actually, track 7. Track 8, Peter Phillips, Veni Sancte Spiritus, Come Holy Spirit, and then there are a lot of subdivisions to this work. Now, Phillips left England in 1582 because of his Catholic faith and traveled throughout Europe, notably to Rome, Madrid, Paris, and finally to Antwerp in Belgium, where he remained for several years. He became organist to Archduke Albert, the governor of the southern Netherlands, from 1597 onwards. He entered the priesthood after the death of his wife and enjoyed a privileged position at the court in Brussels, where he met Girolamo Frescobaldi. Okay, so this piece starts plein jeu with full-powered, brash organ sound. The melody of the hymn is in the bass. Most of the verses feature diminutions, often in the upper voice. Diminution is when a melody note is ornamented by a run of shorter notes, making the line more ornate and active. Listen and see if you can pull this quality out. So you're going to listen to those sort of extra notes in the melody. That's a diminution. Okay, we got a solid cadence there. Let's come out right there. So the diminutions would be those little curly cue sort of things that are playing over the chords, or in the middle voices too. The work stays in the softer range and breathy timbre until the sudden nasal onslaught for the very last section of the work at around the 4-minute mark. Track 9, Abraham van den Kerkhoven. That's a really cool name. I think some cool names out in those kind of Flemish places. Fantasia 353 in D pro duplici organo. Kerkhoven belonged to the following generation of Brussels organists. He was a pupil of Franciscus Cornet, Peter's nephew, and was organist at the Church of St. Catherine from 1632 when he was 15 years old until his death. He also succeeded Johann Caspar Kerl as chamber organist to Archduke Leopold Wilhelm in 1648. Now this work is a long fantasia that creates a lively and ever-changing dialogue between the two manuals of the organ. Transition from one keyboard to the other is usually seamless until echo passages begin to emerge toward the end. You can hear diminutions come in the upper voice at around the 45-second mark. I like the disappearance of the work's center of gravity via the absence of bass at around the 3-minute mark. At around 5 minutes and 45 seconds, echo effects between the two keyboard manuals begin, and this is unique in organ literature of the period, so of course I want to sample that. Something new from the past. Okay, so you can hear that happening, the echo and the slightly softer, but this is really something you want to see because the keyboardist's hands are jumping from manual to manual. It's kind of a cool thing to watch. Unfortunately, on a recording, we can't do that. Okay, we're going to move to a new organ here. This is the Sint Truiden in Schuurhoven and Sint Jacobuskerk organ built by Christian and/or Remy Ancion circa 1650. Anyway, that's the organ we're hearing. The first track we're going to hear is Peter Phillips' Fantasie de Petro Filippi. Here we have a new organ, and of course this piece is played on the gentler woodwind setting of the organ. This piece comes across as a set of kaleidoscopic variations on the theme. Tracks 11 through 14, Peter Cornet, Regina Coeli. Not much is known about Cornet, except that he belonged to a family of musicians, and he has a great name for a musician too, as it turns out. Some of these musicians were active in the Capilla Flamenca in Madrid. He became organist to Archduchess Isabella around 1606 and was also active as an organ builder and expert. I'm thinking, wouldn't it be cool to be an archduke and you just have all these musicians playing for you? That'd be awesome.
Building organs and all kinds of cool stuff, yeah.
That'd be a good life, I think. Anyway, track 11, Regina Coeli, Queen of Heaven, is what that means. The first verse is played on the plein jeu, which is the full open organ sound. The sound is full, but the opening harmony is on a single note, and the harmony fills out gradually. Track 12, Quia quem meruisti. Flute settings were chosen for this registration. Foccroulle says this registration is particularly transparent. I liked the unique, gentle burst of breath effect of this sound. This is really one of the highlights of the album for me. Pretty change there, too. Nice. Very nice. Now, transparent is a good word to describe this sound. It sounds close to electronic at times, too. Track 13, Resurrexit, Sicut Dixit. The cornet setting is used for the right hand. There are echoes between the cornet and the accompaniment in the middle of this section. So that brasher sound that you heard is the cornet sound. Now this also reappears at the 2-minute mark. Track 14, Ora pro nobis. Reed stops in the spirit of a pre-classical grand jeu are used here. This gives the movement an overall nasal sound, and again, I like the way Foccroulle has displayed so many of the organ's timbres in a single work. The sound gets full in its harmony here. Track 15 by an anonymous composer. It's a Fantasia. These are all numbered, by the way, and I haven't been reading the numbers. This is number 46 in the manuscript that it's taken from. The wind sound is used here, again, in its transparent mode. The piece has a gentle bounce to it that brings some appeal with it. Really nice. There's a lot of immediate appeal to the piece, not only due to its catchy theme, but to a gentle wavering effect in the melodic line that Foccroulle somehow produces. You heard a bit of it in the sample, near the end of it. Now at around the 3-minute mark, a new register comes in, a reedier one. It stands out as the main melodic line, but is somewhere in the middle of the harmony. Track 16, anonymous composer. This is a toccata, number 45, in its manuscript. I think this would be the grand jeu setting of the organ. The harmony is close and opaque in the mid-range. The upper voices, which are more in the mid-range, are where the movement occurs. The movement in the work makes its way downward by the 2-minute mark, as does the bass. It finishes with a chord in the mid-range built on a lower bass note. All right, new instrument here from track 17. In Leuven, Sint-Jan de Doper. Groot Beginhof. Okay, Belgian people. Just sound that out slowly, and you'll know what I'm saying here. Built by Peter Goldfuss, I guess, in 1692. Track 17, Peter Cornet, Tantum Ergo. This work features counterpoint and diminutions. It's got a flowing tempo and is dense in its mid-range, where it mostly resides. The bass is pretty high in the range. Track 18, Peter Cornet again, Fantasia Ottavi Toni. This is a canzona. A 4-inch flute stop is used to provide lightness and highlight the flexibility of the polyphonic texture, as well as its virtuosity and expressiveness. The sound has a high, crystalline quality, sort of like I imagine the sound of heaven to be. I really liked this track and this sound. Let's hear a little bit of this. I really hope heaven is on the quieter side, actually, like that. So it's light and distant, this piece. The texture remains throughout the work. Track 19, Peter Cornet again, Fantasia Ottavi Toni. Once again, a Fantasia demonstrating virtuosity and expressiveness. The opening has an echo of Bach's famous toccata and fugue in D minor, to my ears anyway, with an opening trill on a note in the mid-range, but it goes in a different direction, building in harmony. There are some harsh passing harmonies that really caught my ear. There are short, pinging phrases that zip back and forth and sometimes swirl when they lengthen. Track 20, John Bull, Carol, Ihn Kindeken is ons geboren. I actually know what this means because it's not that far away from the German, a child is born to us. This is a Christmas carol, and for this recording, Foccroulle has chosen one of the 3 particularly lively settings extant. Appropriately, this is played on the gentler wind setting. The tone has a breathy quality. A reedier sound comes in at around the 40-second mark. The setting changes to something fuller at around the 1 minute and 30-second mark, still having a wind sound, but a more crystalline one. Summer's not even here yet, but before you know it, it'll be Christmas. Just wait.
Can't wait to go shopping.
Track 21, John Bull, Fantasia on a theme by Sweelinck. Bull and Sweelinck had met in Antwerp and held each other in high esteem. This meditation is on a chromatic subject, and the first subject is treated in various forms that allude to Sweelinck's art. The work starts on a bass pedal and rises chromatically. It stays in the mid-range, and as you can imagine, for a highly chromatic work, stays pretty opaque and dense-sounding. Yeah, there's a lot of chromaticism in this work. It was pretty murky to kind of unravel these lines, but I thought it was really cool. Let's hear it. Right, all those little chromatic climbing lines there. There are plenty of trills decorating the lines, but that one chromatic line remains throughout the work, driving the work's harmonic profile. It sounds chromatic throughout. Track 22, Abraham van den Kerkhoven, Fantasia 356 in D minor. The piece uses wind settings with a cornet sound coming in for a theme in the upper range. Now, in the quieter part, one of the things I love about this particular organ is that it's old, so you can hear the mechanism inside the pipes, like opening and closing.
Right.
I really love that sound. I kind of wish that hadn't disappeared with these new, very powerful, modern organs that we get in the United States anyway. And really in Japan, if there's ever an organ in Japan, it's going to be a newer one. The slower moving clouds of the wind harmonies set it up for a response, and this is the way the piece goes. It unfolds at a relatively slow tempo with plenty of trills decorating the cornet line until reaching the end. And that's the end of the album. As an organist, Foccroulle is a traditionalist and lets the organs he plays for speak for themselves. He seems to see his function as presenting the organ's individual personality, and that is a welcome quality given the three fantastic 300-year-old organs heard on this album, all of them registering with startling fullness for their age. The booklet notes are very helpful in explaining his interpretations. The choice of registers brings this music to life in interesting ways, particularly in the multi-movement or multiverse works. Not the multiverse, many verses, multiverse. Not the thing that high tech is trying to build. That's a different thing. The many-versed works feature stop changes in each section, so you get a different sort of organ sound. Foccroulle's choices of stops draws out the quality of each work in a way that keeps the listener engaged throughout the album. I found this to be an album to listen to. For the music, of course, it's all new to my ears, and it's all very interesting. But especially for the sound of the organs themselves, it's almost like a trip back in time, and a trip into the churches these organs were housed in. And if we really know our European history, a trip back into more turbulent times in these churches as well. Lucky Belgians and Dutch today, who get to hear these instruments every week, are very fortunate indeed. But we have this album to hear them on and imagine that we're with them.
We hear a lot of Hammond organ on the jazz side of the show.
That's a very American thing, isn't it?
And all of our favorite players are really in command of the various drawbar settings to get those great tones that match each sort of situation. And here, Bernard Foccroulle is a real master of the stops on these organs, and so his choices of sounds are what bring a lot of charm to these pieces, as well as the different characteristics of each organ. And that's one layer. And then you have the interesting compositions. Just going through the recording, my ear was drawn to certain things. I really loved the opening track by Bull with all of the suspensions in there. Mm-hmm. And then when you go on to track 2, the second movement of that, the interesting bass instrument sound in the organ there, that stop really caught my attention as well. The Peter Phillips has the melody in the bass on track 8, which was an interesting change. And then when you get to the Van den Kerkhoven in track 9, your ear is drawn right to the top end of the sound. There's all these little ornamentations going on, really interesting. Peter Phillips, track 10, that has a very haunting opening that caught my attention. Then throughout the Peter Cornet 11 to 14 tracks, there's so much variety in all of the stop tones. I thought this organ is capable of lots of different type of sounds. Track 16, the Anonymous Toccata, had a lot of great tones in it too, and the different line movement was really interesting, including the bass. There was so much going on. It's too bad we don't know who composed this. And one of my favorite ones was the Peter Cornet Fantasia, track 18, which you sampled. That's just got really dreamy sounds, something completely different. And then the John Bull track 21 with that endless building tension with the rising chromaticism was really interesting. It just keeps building and building. Lots of intriguing different compositions, different organs, and an organist who knows how to pick the right sounds for each part and each movement. So even if you're not a real organ connoisseur, I think this one has a lot to enjoy.
All right, we don't spend enough time in the 19th century, and next week we won't either, but okay. I want to get one in here. Violin sonatas by 19th century women composers. How about that? Giuliana de Siato on violin and Annarosa Partipilo piano. And both of these women were born in Bari in southern Italy. Now, this is on the Da Vinci Classics label, our friends at Da Vinci Classics. This is released on May 8th, 2026. And it's very long, an hour and 18 minutes. But doesn't seem that way. Anyway, our first work is by Louise Adolphe Lebeau, 1850 to 1927. Her Violin Sonata number 1 in C minor, opus 10. Track 1 is the first movement Allegro, and the sonata starts out in full movement. It almost starts like it's already been going on for some time. We go on to a sweeter melody there. Be nice to hear more of it, but let's keep going. The sound on this recording is rather pleasant, with the violin forward and the piano a bit in the background, picking up some room ambience. I like the transition into the second theme, which comes smoothly and quickly at around the 40-second mark. Piano figures and accompaniment are attractive too, and in fact, Partipilo is constantly playing in this movement, keeping momentum going. The movement is on the temperamental side, not staying calm for long, despite the attractive themes. The whole thing flows seamlessly into its various sections, including the repeat of the exposition at around the 2-minute mark. At 3 minutes and 25 seconds, there's a sudden move to the development section, again smoothly taken despite its jolting quality. At 4 minutes and 35 seconds, the recapitulation begins. This movement has had no ebbing in its forward movement and continues in a determined stride to the ending chord. It's impressive and well played, too. Track 2, the second movement, Andante cantabile. Well, we need a little break, and we get it here. The piano starts the movement with a declaimed melodic statement. The violin takes it over and makes it more song-like with its legato. There's a second theme at around the 1 minute and 20-second mark, and in fact, the movement seems to be a set of variations on the opening, and each section is attractive, with De Siato and Partipilo bringing great musicality to it. They seem to choose a perfect tempo to bring out the flowing character and the emotion of the movement. At around the 3 minute and 30-second mark, the theme as we heard it when the violin first came in is repeated. Further variations, mostly the piano's figuration, come afterwards. The third movement is marked Allegro con fuoco. The opening, as in the first movement, bursts out in both instruments with a strongly felt theme. Don't know when that cadence is coming, so I'm going to have to come out. I like Siato's tone in her higher range in the departure from the opening theme after the first minute. The opening is back just after the 2-minute mark. Once again, transitions are subtly made, and I'm thinking it's the duo that are bringing this quality to the piece. They find a character that fits the previous section with the new one and move to new sections with the listener barely noticing. The work has a build-up to an exciting final chord. Tracks 4 through 7, Emilie Meyer, Violin Sonata in E major. Now, Meyer was German, and the first movement here is Allegro. This is track 4. There's not much of a pause between the end of the previous work and the beginning of this one. This piece begins with a strong accented chord, keeping it in the same expressive world as the Le Beau Sonata. It does go into a full, gentler second theme and lightens up on the forward drive of the tempo at times. At around the 1 minute and 30-second mark, the second theme is heard. Okay, we get a build-up right there to the cadence. Now, the end of the exposition comes on a strong tonic chord, making it sound like the premature end of the movement. The exposition repeats after this, and then at 5 minutes and 25 seconds, the development begins. This time, the exposition does not land on the tonic chord, but continues on into the development. The development is made of cascading lines, especially from the piano. At 8 minutes and 15 seconds, the recapitulation comes crashing in. The second theme, now in the tonic key, sounds particularly pretty here at the 7 minute and 30-second mark. There's a brief coda and a big approach to the final tonic chord. Track 5 is the second movement, Andante. The piano comes in with a light tone, and the violin enters later with a sensitively played theme. It may as well just come out right there at the cadence. It does go on. A second, slightly rocking theme comes in after a pause at around the 1 minute and 30-second mark. Again, this duo judges tempos unerringly. All of the movements we've heard so far have an ideal flow to them. The new section comes across appealingly. At 2 minutes and 42 seconds, the opening is back, this time with the theme in the piano. There's a sort of coda at the end, where the tempo slows and the movement comes to a subtle close. Track 6, the third movement, Rondo Allegro Assai. There's a folk dance quality to the rondo theme here. Okay, and you get the idea there. This is a pretty dancey movement. The flow is once again put in the foreground by the duo in this work. It's given a lively flow right to the end, through each episode and return of the cheerful rondo theme. Track 7, the fourth movement, Finale, Adagio to Presto. The Adagio starts off as a kind of recitativo, slow and sensitive, with phrases separated by silences. There's a build-up just before the 1 minute mark, that's extended until the 2 minute mark, which is where the presto starts. The theme here is gestural, with pauses between separating the brief phrases. Let's go straight to the presto. After the 4-minute mark, the Adagio section material comes back, building more tension with its unresolved phrases. The Presto material provides the resolution once again, here at 5 minutes and 15 seconds or so. When it returns, it drives to the final cadence. Tracks 8 through 11 are Louise Farranc's Violin Sonata No. 2 in A major, Opus 39. Now, Farranc lived 1804 to 1875. Track 8 is the first movement, Allegro Grazioso. Farranc's second violin sonata starts with a pretty piano melody accompanied by arpeggios. The violin comes in with a theme shortly afterwards. The energy picks up right after that, and in the transition to the second theme, which begins at 1 minute and 30 seconds, again with the piano introducing it, it sounds like an entirely new section of music. The build-up to the cadence ending the exposition comes across with sudden boldness. There's no exposition repeat here, the development coming in with climbing violin lines. It shuffles through some rebalancing key areas, and at 4 minutes and 28 seconds, a gentler theme is played, first by the violin, and echoed by the piano. At 4 minutes and 54 seconds, there seems to be a sudden departure from the mood, but only seconds later, at the 5-minute mark, the recapitulation starts, seemingly with a more comfortable flow this time, and that previous chord is revealed to be an emphatic setup for the first theme's return. I'm noticing the piano more in this section, and the flurries of notes it plays in the cadence material are well articulated and a bit exciting, too, though we know where this music is headed. There's a minute-long coda at the end of the movement that settles the music down a bit while keeping it flowing. Track 9, the second movement, Scherzo, marked Allegro. And this is pretty interesting. You have a Scherzo second movement, and then the third movement is going to be Adagio. Now, that's the reverse of what we normally expect, and Mahler really picked up on this and did it a lot. So this is an early version of that. Very clever. Madame Farranc. Now, the opening phrase, this is the Scherzo, the second movement we're talking about now, track 9. The opening phrase is made of short themes separated by rhythmic hiccups. Let's hear it. Now, Farranc has an ear for appealing melodies, as you'll see throughout this movement and really the whole work. The scherzo's shape is ABA, with the A section having a mini ABA form itself. The B section of the movement begins at 2 minutes and 40 seconds, and it has a lullaby-like feel to it. Siato plays a bit with the phrasing when she's accompanying. At 4 minutes and 18 seconds, the beginning of the B section is back with downwards cascading piano accompaniment. The A section reappears at 5 minutes and 15 seconds, and sounds a bit East European in this rhythm. This quickly repeats, and the movement ends with a sudden quietening of the theme and slowing of the tempo. Track 10, the third movement, Adagio. The piano accompaniment here is romantic in a standard way. The violin enters in accompaniment, adding some harmony to the piano's line. The violin's playing of the theme begins at the 30-second mark. It's got an appealing, sighing quality to it. key change at the end there. There's another appealing song-like theme at 2 minutes and 58 seconds in the violin, with yet more attractive accompaniment from the piano. The opening theme reappears at 5 minutes and 18 seconds. This gentle movement is in ABA form, with pretty straightforward traversals of quietly melting, heartfelt themes. There's a 1-minute coda at the end. Track 11, the fourth movement finale, marked Allegro. A skipping, happy, dotted note rhythm begins the finale. Let's hear this. Okay, we head into the next theme after that. This suddenly breaks up into scattered key-changing material, as you've just heard, then returns to the opening theme. The piano introduces a new theme in 1 minute and 40 seconds with a similar melodic profile to the opening, but without the dotted rhythm. Then, at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, the main theme returns, and this movement's suspected rondo form is confirmed. Another departure from the rondo theme appears, after which the rondo theme is again restated, with variations to the accompaniment. Ferrara is a big fan of the coda, and this movement has one as well, in the last minute. And track 12 is a single movement work by Cécile Chaminade, 1857 to 1944. She was a French composer, and this is her Capriccio in E minor, opus 18. The movement starts as a sort of weepy, East European-like theme, with subtle gradations of speed in the melodic line. With that kind of light, dancing, leaping quality, it's got sort of, I said, East European, what we would have called at one time gypsy style.
Right.
This goes on until the 2 minute and 9 second mark when the B section kicks in and a smoother theme with a similar dynamic and tempo appears. At the 5 minute and 6 second mark, the opening theme returns with some grander accompaniment at times and the tempo gradations intact. The piece ends with a sort of musical wink at the listener. This is an album of unfairly neglected chamber works from the 19th century, and sadly, there's a lot of it. Or maybe it's a good thing because we get to hear it for the first time. I don't know. It depends on your perspective, I guess. But we need less neglected music is what I'm trying to say here. The focus on women composers has happily brought a lot of this music to light, and it turns out we've been missing out, especially in the case of the Le Beau Violin Sonata, a very impressive work with its subtle changes into the various sections of the sonata form, well taken by Siato and Partipilo. They present this work in the best imaginable light, and I really took to it. The duo, as I've mentioned, judge tempos perfectly and draw out appropriate emotion from each work, sensitive to the style and flow of each movement. The Meyer Sonata has similarly subtly taken sectional changes and also rewards the listener with interesting material. The Ferrara Sonata consists of attractive material well framed in traditional forms, and the Chaminade Capriccio's nature is only mildly capricious, but interesting nevertheless. I'd say that the German women outshine the French women on this recording, but the real champions here are the Italian women, or more accurately the Barian women, performing the works. Giuliana de Siato on violin and Annarosa Partipilo on the piano are a fantastic partnership who provide all the requisite emotion and some subtlety in their phrasing, all of which present these works in an attractive light. I go away from the recording interested in hearing more from them in particular.
These works were all enjoyable. They all sounded very much rooted in the style of the 19th century, but each had some unique charming points. In the Lebeau, the use of harmony was appealing, as well as the decoration of the piano lines. The Meyer had the most instantly appealing melodies to me. In the Franck, the piano really had an equal partnership, not just working on the accompaniment lines, so the interaction between the instruments was really interesting. The chaminade was expressive, and I really liked the lilt to the violin lines. Giuliana de Siato and Annarosa Partipilo have an affinity for each other that comes through in their playing. De Siato's violin tone is very pleasing. I thought the piano sounds a bit recessed and cloudy in the recording. That's probably due to the room sound and microphone placement choices. It sounds rather like a recital more than a studio sound. In any case, it's a joy to hear these forgotten works by women composers, and I thought the playing on the recording was enthusiastic and very enjoyable.
Yeah, me too. I actually like the Lebeau piece the best.
Oh, okay.
The opening work. I thought it was really, that whole continuous flow of it really kind of did it for me. All right, on to the contemporary composer of the week, and that is Benoit Mernier. This is a new name for me. He was born in Bastogne, Belgium, in 1964, Belgian composer, and this is his album called Ustica. It's also the name of one of the compositions on the album. And this is performed by various artists. I will name them as the works come up. And this is released by the Belgian Cypres label, and it was released on April 30th. Now, the Cypres record label has been releasing recordings of Benoit Mernier's music for 25 years now.
Wow.
And I'm only just catching up with it just in this instant. There you go. There's so much to discover in classical music that even if you listen to it all the time, like I do, you're still finding new things. It's just this giant ocean of different sounds. All right, track one. The piece is called Comme d'autres esprits. All the titles are French, by the way. And this is for orchestra, composed in 2019. And the performers here are the Orchestre Philharmonique Royale de Liège, with Gergely Madaras conducting. This work was commissioned for the 30th anniversary of Belgium's Ars Musica Festival. It was conceived to precede a performance of Henri Dutilleux's Tout un monde lointain. Dutilleux's work takes its title from a line in Baudelaire's poem Le Chevelure, which prompted Mernier to take his title from the same poem. What other spirits sail on in the poem is music. Mernier calls the work Gallic in spirit, but there's a brief quotation from Wagner's Tristan und Isolde, the first two bars of Act 3, in fact. It serves as a reference to a famous letter of praise that Baudelaire wrote to Wagner, and also to the amorous expression of La Chevelure, the poem, that is. The exoticism found in Baudelaire's La Chevelure, as well as his poem Un hémisphère dans une chevelure, which means something like a half circle in the hair, I guess. I don't know what it means. Anyway, not a half circle, a half sphere, right? Hemisphere. Okay, fragments of the Mernier piece for soprano and piano are integrated into this work, and it's echoed in the music. Mernier says the piece is an exercise in atmosphere, an adagio that is both static and mobile, calm and shimmering, like a floating dream of travel, as if the music were sailing on its own waves. And I think that exercise in hemisphere description is a pretty good description for the entire album, really.
Yeah.
Now, it starts with some spread out harp notes. This sets a sort of ancient atmosphere. Other wind instruments subtly appear at low volume. I love the timbral approach in this mysterious opening. I'll confess right away, I tend to love music that really focuses on timbre, and Debussy really started that at the early of the 20th century, but I think it's really fascinating when the meaning of the piece is located in the timbre. By the 1 minute mark, we're hearing modal harmony in lines and melodic shapes. There's a surge at the 1 minute and 50-second mark, and the harmony sort of droops at about the 2 minute mark in an interesting effect. Combinations of wind timbres are very enticing. It's hard to know where to sample, as the work sounds pretty spontaneous in its ideas throughout. But I like these wind combinations, so let's hear this. Okay, think atmosphere. The harmony and orchestration grow more transparent and mysterious, and we hear different material in the various instrumental combinations. The work mostly comes across as atmospheric. I liked the sudden change to a contrast between low winds like contrabassoons and bass clarinets, punctuated by fluttering high winds at about the 6-minute mark. The music moves slowly as subtle strings take over by the 8-minute mark. Rising wind lines take over briefly at the 9-minute mark, and this leads to a quiet, sustained chord and a pause. The winds bring it back, but there's a lot of stillness now, as though we're experiencing a silent landscape. This occurs at around the 10-minute mark. The work then moves glacially to its end on long sustained notes in the bass, with some higher sustained notes as well. Track 2, Sur un ciel immense, for orchestra, composed in 2023. This is performed by the Orchestre Philharmonique Royale de Liège, with, again, Gergely Madaras conducting. Sur un ciel immense resulted from a commission from the Orchestre Philharmonique Royale de Liège and Gergely Madaras himself. This work has a lively and spirited character and an emphasis on space and sonic perspectives rather than melodic figures. Its lightness of touch and vivacity represent a tribute to the composer Philippe Bosmans, who I'm also not familiar with, I'm afraid. Mernier has just completed Bosmans' opera En Pouge Bébé, whose title kind of means one gives the baby a laxative, I guess would be the best way to say it. I actually looked up the story of this opera, and it's about like these parents trying to get this baby to swallow a laxative, and he won't do it, and eventually it turns out that all the adults in the room wind up swallowing the laxative accidentally at the end, so it's obviously a comic opera. I wouldn't mind seeing this, actually. It sounds pretty intriguing, just how the music would work with that. Anyway, the work itself, as you would imagine, reflects Bosmans' witty, light-hearted personality, and Mernier wanted to continue with his joyful mourning, that's M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G, so mourning the dead, his friend the composer, Bosmans, by composing a work that was in no way a funeral lament, but which instead took inspiration from Philippe's distinctive laugh. The title of this particular work, not the opera, comes from Baudelaire's prose poem Un hémisphère dans une chevelure. The opening of this work is perky, and it sounds like it's starting sort of what we'd call in media res, or in the middle of things, like it's already been happening and we're just kind of walking into the room as it's going. Let's listen to it. Yeah, some pretty intriguing sounds right from the start. The opening gives the sense of energy, and that continues, though the energy isn't marked by any sort of strong rhythm. A repeating rhythm appearing in the winds leads to a lighter section at 1 minute and 45 seconds or so. There's a big crescendo to a climactic chord at 2 minutes and 20 seconds that dries up after its crash and leads to strands of competing lines at 2 minutes and 40 seconds. I liked the gentler timbral combinations at the 4-minute mark, heavily featuring winds, though the whole ensemble is subtly in there. At the 6 minute and 30 second mark, the orchestration is reduced to a single oboe, who gets a brief solo look, then winds come in to add harmonic support. The tempo has considerably slowed here, but then circling patterns in the winds at about 8 minutes and 25 seconds start to pick the energy up again. By 9 minutes and 35 seconds, momentum has picked up considerably, and the rhythm sounds like it's defining a windstorm. Orchestration has thinned out here, and small timbral combinations appear, constantly changing. There's a sudden pickup in energy, and the music rises quickly into a higher range where it ends. Track 3, Offering, for alto voice and instrumental ensemble, composed in 2023. This work features Sarah Laulan as the contralto singer, ensemble Sturm und Klang, conducted by Thomas van Heperen. And the ensemble consists of a flute, clarinet, 2 percussionists, harp, and string trio. The text of the work draws on 3 poems from the collection Song Offerings by Rabindranath Tagore, who lived 1861 to 1941. He was the multifaceted Calcutta-born artist known as a composer, writer, painter, and dramatist, and also known for his engagement in India's independence movement. The poems were originally published in Bengali, but Tagore himself made an English version of the poems published in 1912. The first song speaks of anticipation of the loved one. The second begins, "Early in the day, it was whispered that we should sail in a boat," and ends asking if the boat will vanish into the night, like the last glimmer of sunset. And the third, in a different vein, takes as its theme the joy that sets the twin brothers, life and death, dancing over the wide world. In the work, each song flows seamlessly into the next as if in a state of weightlessness. The work is dedicated to the memory of the Belgian poet Lucien Noulet, who lived 1957 to 2023, and was commissioned by the Brussels-based festival Lettres en Voix. The English text to the song is included in the booklet just before the English descriptions of the works. It's easy to overlook, but it's in there. The piece starts gently with a single instrument sounding, first a harp, then a violin, then there are harmonies. The vocal is in right away. The violin has a sighing figure at around the 30-second mark. I like the rather odd use of the violin and then the flute. So you've got this voice, and a pretty subtle voice, swimming in this really orchestration of really interesting sounds, really. The piece seems to be using passing quarter tones via sliding down. The vocalist here, Sarah Laulan, sets a comfortable mood and is dramatic when required. Her English vocals are easily understandable, which is a plus in following the composition. She has an attractive, clean-sounding mezzo, but she's actually called a contralto or an alto. The piece is thinly orchestrated and remains dusky and mysterious until its final section begins at around the 11-minute mark, with some odd sections of tonality. There's another quarter-tone sliding section in the strings at around the 5-minute mark, and I like the way the low flute subtly takes over after that section. At the 5-minute and 50-second mark, the second poem begins, and the sections are separated by a series of 3 dots in the text, so you can kind of tell where they begin and end. The mood of the composition, however, stays relatively the same. In this section, at around the 8-minute mark, Laulan adds some variety to her approach, changing her mode of attack and dynamic, forte then pianissimo. The piece comes across gently with a little harmonic spice sprinkled on at times. At the end of the second poem, there are more glissandoing strings, a harp arpeggio, and sprightly flute begin the new section, which starts with the words, "Let all the strains of joy mingle in my last song." Some orchestral effects include bouncing the bow off of the strings, and the orchestration has a light, cheerful character, yet some of the harmony and extended playing techniques keep the piece's mystery intact. I'm going to sample a little bit of this towards the end as well. There's a brief nod to the winds we hear near the beginning, then a light burst of energy brings the piece to an end. Tracks 4 through 5, 2 poems for violin and piano, composed in 2020. This features Tatiana Samouil on violin and David Lively on piano. This work is a tribute written on the death of the Belgian writer Jacques de Decker and dedicated to his memory. He was the librettist for Mernier's first opera, Frühlings Erwachen, based on the play of the same name by Frank Wedekind. The pieces both take their titles from two poems by Paul Verlaine, the sixth of the Ariette oubliée, which is called Celle des ciels des gens de Nivelles. It's kind of a cool title. And L'Angelus du Matin. Track 4 is titled Voici que la nuit vraie arrive, or Now that the true night arrives. The violin begins with a quiet gesture here. The piano is in, also playing a quietly arpeggiated line that the violin eventually melodizes over. There's a crescendo at the 2-minute mark and an outburst of passion in the violin, who plays a repeating line that eventually subsides. Piano subtly changes the harmony when he plays solo for a few measures, then the violin gets a brief solo section. This work comes across as a bit abstract as it consists of few chords, and mostly of arpeggiated lines from the piano that lead to places that the violin interprets via melody. Once again, it's rather mysterious. Changes of section remain slow and subtle, and are always made by the piano. The piece ends on discordant moaning figures from the violin. Track 5, Le bruit d'un chose éveillée, the noise from awakened things. This work reuses material from Mernier's Violin Concerto of 2015. The poem starts with a livelier rhythm and puts the violin through its technical paces right away, with all sorts of extended techniques employed, from pizzicato to sul ponticello playing. And there's the sul ponticello playing right at the end there. The whole feel of this is kind of mischievous to my ears. Samouil digs in once she reaches the first forte section at 1 minute and 20 seconds. The violin gets some moaning double stops after the 3-minute mark, and by that point the piece has lost its lively feeling. Toward the end, some of the violin's opening techniques return, signaling some sort of closure being reached. The section is highly staccato. There are some questioning light phrases at the very end that made me smile, and the piece ends on one last forte run toward the final chord. Track 6 is the title track, Ustica, for chamber orchestra, composed in 2019. This is performed by Ensemble Musiques Nouvelles, conducted by Jean-Paul Dessy. All of the other works on the album were recorded in 2023 to 2025, but this recording goes back to 2019. Ustica grew from a commission from Jean-Paul Dessy and the Mons-based Musiques Nouvelles for a transgenerational project involving members of the ensemble, which has been exploring contemporary repertoire for more than 50 years, and young students from Arts, that's capital A-R-T-S, Mons University of the Arts. The work is written for a chamber orchestra of 20 players, flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon, horn, trumpet, trombone, 2 percussionists, harp, piano, and 9 strings. Here, Mernier tries to simulate a full-scale symphony orchestra while also enabling each player to participate actively and equitably in the performance. The challenge was for an ensemble of soloists to be able to merge to create spacious orchestral textures. It's inspired by the poem Ustica by the Mexican writer Octavio Paz. Ustica is a small volcanic island north of Sicily, known as a ship's graveyard. Now the piece starts with subtle rustling sounds from the percussion. A foreboding brass note starts repeating, followed by eerie technique and harmony in the winds. This piece occupies its own timbral world right from the beginning and makes an impression. The recorded sound has some dimensionality, with deep bass drum registering strongly. Glissandoing sounds from various orchestral groupings are heard at around the 3-minute mark. There's a sort of downward movement to many of the lines, so that downward moving sense sticks in your mind after a while. Even as the harmony rises higher, just before the 5-minute mark, the lines themselves move downward. The music lightens a bit by the 7-minute mark, with winds playing pungent harmonies in the high end. A sort of climax is reached at around the 9-minute and 30-second mark, with a violin and probably a flute playing the downward moving theme in harmony. Well, we got to hear a little bit of the sound world of this piece. I'm going to go way into the 9th minute to sample this. So you're hearing some sustained orchestration, but those little glissandos in there really give it a little bit of character. An attractive section for wind harmony comes in after the 12-minute mark. There are also appealing melodic phrases at points of the work, and I like the soft chiming percussion at the very end, heard as the orchestra plays with a hush. And that's the end of the album. Now Mernier, on the evidence of this album, has a love of quiet and orchestrational subtlety, and that's what we hear in each piece. Mernier composes for atmosphere for the most part. At least this is the case for the first 2 works of the album, which rely on timbral combinations and rhythmic gestures to put the work across. The title work, Ustica, is attractively orchestrated and has some appealing melodic material as well. We hear Mernier in chamber guise in the poems for violin and piano, sensitively played by Tatiana Samouil and David Lively on the piano, and Sarah Laulan, contralto, delivers a calming performance in the vocal work Offering. Her razor-sharp pronunciation of the words while singing only make the work sound more appealing. All the music on the album is subtly performed, with gorgeous instrumental balance from the larger ensembles. The music manages to be appealing and yet to include a few harmonic and technique-based challenges, though nothing to put the listener off. I found myself lightly intrigued throughout. The music has its own original profile, and I had a pleasant evening discovering the sound world of Benoit Mernier.
What I found most interesting about Mernier was his use of timbre, especially the scoring for woodwinds. The opening work, Comme de trois esprits, had subtle woodwind writing around the harp, bass clarinet ideas later on, and that contrasted with the orchestral swells and the final low-end rich passage at the end of the work. The Sur un ciel immense also had woodwind parts that caught my ear, and the Ustica had more full use of the orchestral palette, and again, the timbral changes were the most interesting part to me. I found it a bit murky with unsettling harmonies, but it was still interesting. And I see that he's written concertos for the piano and violin, but seeing as how his flute and woodwind conceptions were interesting, I really hope he composes a work for flute or clarinet. I'd be really interested in hearing what he would do with that.
I bet he has, actually, because they've released a lot of his music. We'll have to go back into the catalog and look for that.
Yeah, I found all of the woodwind sounds on the recording really compelling. Okay, on to the jazz side. We're going to start out with 2 saxophone recordings. The first one is called The Light of Day by saxophonist Floriaan Wempe. It's on Télès Music. It came out May 8th. Saxophonist Floriaan Wempe is from the Netherlands. Born in 1989, he grew up hearing bebop and hard bop, and he studied at the Royal Conservatory in The Hague, while making trips to New York City. He's played with Roy Hargrove, Philip Harper, and drummer Willie Jones III, who we'll hear on this recording. This is his second album as a leader after 2012's Flow's Flow. This album has a few firsts for him, including his debut on alto sax and his first song lyrics. And thanks to Floriaan for sending me the credits and some more info about the recording, since there wasn't much available online. From the notes, Floriaan says, "I try to write melodic songs that tell a story and that are inviting to be creative. With the original songs on this album, we were able to come together for the first time, play them through, and record straight away. If some of them will linger in the listener's ear and invite other musicians to play them and have fun, just like we did, it would be my biggest thrill."
And a lot of the musicians in his band have those double vowels in their names that I think are really cool.
Yeah. And let's hope that all songs people write live on to be played in another day.
Yeah.
So on this recording, Floriaan Wempe on tenor sax, alto sax, and all compositions. Rob Van Bavel on piano, who has a long career spanning nearly 40 years. He's known for his work with musicians like Wynton Marsalis and Woody Shaw. Steve Zwanink on bass. He's a Dutch bassist who's played with a lot of big names like Harold Mayburn, Joe Farnsworth, John Marshall, Peter Bernstein, and Mike Ladon. Willie Jones III, a well-known American drummer, and we've heard him on the podcast before with the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra and with pianist Marius Vanderbrink, among others. Rodolfo Ferreira Neves on trumpet and flugelhorn. He's a Brazilian-Portuguese trumpeter and guest vocalist Faye Klaassen. She's a Dutch vocalist who's collaborated with a lot of big jazz names like Toots Thielemans and Mike Sturm. The recording gets underway with a tune called The Observer. Willie Jones III sets up the 6/8 groove on the 4-measure intro. The melody is minor, but has some interesting twists in the harmonies. Wempe is on tenor sax here with unison horn lines that split into harmonies. It's in an AABA structure with 15-measure A sections and an 8-measure B. Let's hear it get going. Just getting into the B section there. We'll have to come out of it, but let's come back in to hear Wempe get started on a tenor sax solo. Warm tone and phrasing with space. Ferreira Neves follows on trumpet with a nicely constructed solo, and Van Bavel has a piano solo that digs in with interesting ideas in both hands. They pick up the melody from the B section into a little coda ending. Track 2 is Acquiescence. Van Bavel gets to start this out with solo rubato piano. He plays on for almost a minute and a half before Wempe is in on a gently airy-toned melody. Sounds like on alto sax here. Let's catch the end of the opening piano into some of the melody. Sounds pretty. It's a short tune at less than 3.5 minutes, and it's thoroughly composed. Track 3 is Quest. This gets started with an 8-measure intro with some jumpy piano chords and drum fills. The horn melody is 80 measures long and keeps evolving, the quest being driven along by Zwanig's chugging bass lines. Let's hear as much of it as we can in a minute. Wempe is up first for a tenor sax solo. He's got a very nice sense of swing here and lots of melodic ideas. On this one, let's check out Ferrara Neves' trumpet solo. Van Bavel follows with an exciting piano solo before a half-sized final melody section ends it up. Track 4 is Angel Roy, a pretty and lifting tribute to Roy Hargrove, with Faye Clausen here singing Wempe's original lyrics. Let's check out the vocals into some vocalizations.
On comes a man blessed with a sound, truly a king uncrowned. Singing his horn, melting our hearts outright. Here is a voice you will never forget, the trumpet of our time, showing us night after night what music's all about. No need for words, we would all soon find out.
After the vocalizations, she returns to the lyrics, and then Wempe gets to finish it with a tenor sax solo, so let's hear his playing as well. Track 5 is called Love Me. It's a vocal ballad featuring Clausen again. It has a real jazz standard quality to it. Really nice writing. Clausen has a great phrasing and a voice you could listen to all night. Let's listen to her get started with some classy piano backing from Van Bavel.
Love me in the autumn moonlight. Let me taste your sweetness. Neath the stars above. Keep me in your arms, dear. Let me feel the magic I've been dreaming of. Each time
I wanted to let it go just to get to the B section a little bit there. Ferreira Neves has a solo. Sounds like it's flugelhorn here, and Clausen is back to finish things up in style. I'll leave you to check out the rest of the tune because I hate to chop it up in a sample at this slow tempo. Track 6 is October. The rhythm section gets to start this out with an intro of fun rhythmic figures with neat bass and left-hand piano movement, and then Van Bavel gets cooking with the piano solo. Let's check out some of his playing a little bit into the tune. Yeah, bluesy and fun, really rollicking along. Zwanek gets a bass solo too before the horns are in with a melody at 3.5 minutes in that works to some tricky lines. Let's take a listen to them. those are the intro figures there. And the horns will join into the final section. Track 7 is What to Do. This has a rubato start with warm tenor lines over ripples and chimes from Van Bavel. Let's check this out. It's kind of evocative of Coltrane's You Don't Know What Love Is. It gets into time after the intro with Zwanek walking it out into Wempe's return, and he blows on into improvisations. Let's come back in to hear the smoldering climax of his solo. And the ending mirrors the rubato opening to a fluttering finish. Track 8 is The Glow of Promise. There's lots of jumpy, syncopated energy on this modal tune right from the rhythm section intro. The horns have a positive, inquisitive nature, sometimes splitting into harmony over the 46-measure melody. Wempe's off on a solo from there, this time on alto sax, so let's hear some more of his playing on this other horn. Bavel has an energetic piano solo next. They take it through the melody again and keep on with some vamping for Jones to work up the drums and some hard-hitting energy before the horns join back in for the finish. Track 9 is Gonna Be Alright. A little horn lick from the end of the verse opens this into a popping groove from Jones and Zwannig. Clausen is back for the vocals here. The arrangement is fun, with Ferreira Neves' trumpet shadowing the vocal melody line. Wempe works in some other lines as it goes along. Off on a tenor sax solo first. Van Bavel follows with a funky solo that gets neat backing lines, so let's check out a little bit of that. And another verse starts up from there, and Clausen carries it to the end. And the recording ends up with track 10, an alternate take of What to Do. This take skips the rubato intro and comes in with the walking bass in tempo. Check it out for the different solo ideas. Let's just hear a sample of a neat section where Jones and the rhythm section lock in with some of Wempe's rhythmic ideas. Well, this is a recording that really stretches out. All original tunes from Floriaan Wempe that cover a lot of ground, from standard-like tunes, ballads, hard bop-styled, modal. There's a little bit of everything, and he's written lyrics for the skillful vocals of Faye Clausen, who really shines. Angel Roy, the tribute to Roy Hargrove, and the energetic Gonna Be Alright stood out to me. Wempe himself shows a mature solo style with fine phrasing and a big warm tenor sound, branching out to alto sax on a couple tracks here too. Rodolfo Ferreira Neves has some complementary trumpet and flugelhorn solos that fit Wempe's concept well, and they work seamlessly together on the horn melody lines, which may come later in the tune for a twist. The structures and arrangements have some surprises along the way. And let's not forget the rhythm section here with Rob Van Bavel's impressive piano playing, going from sensitive ballad backing to exciting solos, Steve Zwaning's propulsive bass lines, and the great grooves and hard-hitting punctuation of Willie Jones III. I thought it was all rooted in the post-bop tradition, but creative at the same time, and I'll be looking forward to what Wempe decides to try next.
Yeah, I thought this album was had a lot of traditional jazz styles and also immediately appealing, too, all of it, and much of it swings as well. And with 3 vocal tracks to add to the classiness of the overall sound. The star is the album's namesake artist Floriaan Wempe, who gets a lot of soloing time and keeps the listener's interest whether he's playing a slow romantic ballad or a quick swinging solo. The album features several styles, including the funky Gonna Be Alright, which also features vocalist Faye Klassen. She delivers a traditional jazz song tone and fits right into the idiom. Her other 2 tracks are the upbeat Angel Roy and the more torchy Love Me. All different in style, she adjusts her voice well to each situation. Rob Van Bavel on piano also catches the ear with interesting piano solos, never lacking in a classy feel. This is an immediately enjoyable album.
Yeah, looking forward to hearing more from him in the future. All right, on to the next sax album from Anthony Ferrara, Straight into the Sun Vision on SteepleChase. This came out May 8th as well. California native Anthony Ferrara started to play saxophone at age 9. While still studying at NYU's Jazz Studies program, he released his debut album early spring in 2021. Next was Cold Faded in 2022, and his third, Factory Fresh from last year, we talked about in episode 203, Harmonic Haze, in February of last year. All of those 3 recordings were also on SteepleChase, and they all featured the great rhythm section of veterans Gary Versace on piano, Jay Anderson on bass, and Billy Drummond on the drums. On that recording, I noted a searching quality to Ferrara's solos that was complemented by Versace's similar sense of discovery in his piano improvisations. And I want to thank Anthony for sending me the album notes for this new one. SteepleChase is a great jazz label, but there's hardly ever much information online about their releases, so that helped me out a lot. This time Anthony has changed things up, recording with some younger musicians that he's been working with for a while now. So the lineup here is Anthony Ferrara on tenor sax and vocals, Jesse Lynch on piano, who Ferrara met at a Brooklyn jam session, Carlo De Biagio on bass. He's from northern Italy. He studied at the Berklee School of Music, and Ferrara met him while busking in New York during the COVID shutdowns. And interestingly, the notes say he claims to be more of an electric bassist, but we'll hear him exclusively on the acoustic bass here. And on the drums is Josh Farrell, who's from St. Thomas, and Ferrara has known him the longest, meeting at NYU in the late 2010s. From the notes, previously Ferrara showcased his technique, his cerebral approach to writing, and his ability to exploit the formal architecture of those compositions. He showed us what he could do. Now he shows us more of who he is. His improvised narratives flow more readily. The band members wear their mutual familiarity with casual confidence rather than a meeting of multi-generational minds. These performances suggest a conclave of the already like-minded. And Ferrara says, "It's a different imagination of my music with a totally different band. We're doing songs that I've played with these guys before, songs we've played over the last 4 or 5 years. And we've got an intriguing program here, starting out with Miles Davis's 4 from the 1956 recording Miles Davis Quartet. Ferrara's worked out an arrangement for this classic that will make you hear it in a new way. All jazz fans know this melody with the 3-note figures at the start. Here, each phrase gets an extra beat added, resulting in it being 1 measure behind after the 4 phrases, which make it feel like things are rushing to catch up when the melody continues in standard fashion. It's a really neat effect. Let's check it out. Ferrara's getting going on a really interesting first solo here, working from way down low to the upper register with a lot of fun rhythmic play in his phrases. So let's keep on listening to some more. Lynch follows on piano. His lines swing with the smoothness of connection with punchy left-hand chords. Ferrara and Lynch trade eights and then fours with Farrell for a few rounds before a final time through the melody arrangement and some fun improvisations from Ferrara at the end. Track 2 is a Ferrara original on Good's Time. This one they've been playing for 5 years, but it still took 5 takes to get it just right, so you know it's tricky. It's in an A, B, maybe C shape, while the ending section has different chords and sax lines than the opening. The opening sections and ending are at a double time feel with tricky placed hits, and the B has a more loping swing to it. Let's hear it get started. Lynch is off on a solo from there. His speedy lines flow smoothly over the changing rhythms with endless ideas. Let's come back in and hear how he finishes things up. Ferrara's back for that line you hear there, from the melody to a hit as a transition to his solo that soars up high and flows between lyrical ideas and snappier double-time lines. They get back to the melody idea and vamp around for Farrell to work the drums before the ending that comes with a sudden hit. Track 3 is a Ferrara original, Splat, and the notes say that an old friend told Ferrara, You should write a tune, and you should call it Splat. So he did.
That's actually how my rock band came up with a lot of songs.
This is fun. Maybe the splat is the way the unison lines fall out on the melody. It's in an AABA shape, and the 6/8 rhythm becomes clear on the B section in Farrell's crisp cymbals. Lynch is off on a bouncy melodic solo first. I like the way the bass lines change up from snappy to walking underneath. Ferrara follows. His varied articulation is interesting, sometimes slurring, sometimes adding in more clipped phrases. And De Biagio gets a bass solo on this one, so let's check out some of his playing. Agile and interesting solo, and back to the splatty melody from there.
Yeah, I think those chords are the splats.
Yeah. Track 4 is Candy, a tune written by Alex Kramer, Mac David, and Joan Whitney, first recorded by Johnny Mercer in 1944. Here it's arranged by Ferrara. It's a great melody. Let's hear it get going into a break for Ferrara's solo. Swinging along there. His solo is followed by Lynch, and what we want to check out here is the singing debut by Ferrara. The notes say that Ferrara grew up singing and dancing in local theater productions, but he got serious about it in the fall of 2024 when he started dating a singer who encouraged him, even though she was at first a little skeptical. But after 5 months of solid practicing, he thought it sounded okay. However, it's a little bit of a bait and switch here because he's inserted Jimmy McHugh's "I Can't Believe That You're in Love With Me" in the middle of this tune here. So that's what we're going to hear. Let's check it out.
I never knew somebody who can keep me true the way you do. I can't believe that you're in love with me. You're telling everyone you know I'm on your mind each place you go. They can't believe that you're in love with me. I have always placed you far above me. I just can't imagine that you love me. And after all is said and done, to think that I'm the lucky one, I can't believe that you're in love with me.
Well, I don't think Kurt Elling has anything to worry about for missing some gigs by being replaced by Ferrara on vocals, but it's fun and heartfelt, and you know what? You only go around once, so you might as well sing it if you feel it.
Yeah.
Ferrara and Lynch do some trading with Farrell, and Ferrara returns to finish things up with the real Candy lyrics, but I'll leave you to check that out for yourself. Track 5 is a Ferrara original, Fireside Lounging. This was composed at his girlfriend's parents' house on their piano right around Christmas with a fire going on a cold day about a month before this recording. The melody has a kind of airy bossa quality about it, and it gets a straight beat, Farrell adding more clicks the second time around the 16-measure melody. Let's take a listen. De Biagio is up first for a bass solo, followed by Lynch on piano. Let's hear some of Ferrara's solo. It starts out relaxed, but it sounds like he had some cappuccino by the fire, getting more animated and with some nice tone in the upper register. And back to the melody from there to finish it up. Track 6 is also a Ferrara original, Double Sixes. This one has a metaphor of dice games where double sixes offers high risk and high reward. The first section of the melody is in 6/4 time. Also, the 3-measure phrases add up to 6, and then the B section switches up to 12/8. An interesting idea. The rhythm section gets it going. Let's take a sample from Ferrara's entrance a little way in so we can get the whole melody in the sample. rhythmic push in the drums falls away for some ringing bass into a solo from De Biagio. Let's hear some more of his playing on this tune. Lynch follows on piano, and then Ferrara, who gradually comes to life from lower bent pitches, getting snapped into the interesting groove and connecting back to the melody. Track 7 is the title track, a Ferrara original, Straight into the Sun Vision. From the notes, the album metaphor, which is the after image, the blind spot that follows staring into the sun, Ferrara says, I got the idea from a high school friend who lost both his middle vision and central vision, leaving him with just peripheral vision to navigate the world. When we spend all of our focus on one thing, we are left vulnerable to blind spots. It's about quitting substances and being fully present for the life you've been given. So a song of sobriety, you could say. It starts out with rubato sax and rippling piano lines from Lynch. There's a pause, and then Ferrara is in with the surprisingly Chet Baker-esque vocals on his original lyrics. Let's sample from where the vocals come in.
I can see the difference then and now. Something in the distance showed me how. Running circles won't get you too far. Almost like you think that you can run from who you are. At first I was blinded by the light, straight into the sun and out of sight. Nothing in my vision could stand still. Mind spun out, still racing toward the beacon on the hill.
And Ferrara follows with a heartfelt solo that gets some doubled up motion from drums and bass underneath. Lynch has a solo too, but actually you need to hear the final verse to get the full story contained in the lyrics, so let's hear the ending vocal section too.
How long was I on the other side? Can't turn back beyond the great divide. Blank white walls are all my memory knows. Serving as a canvas, I can paint the world my own. I don't trust my eyes to show the way. Burnt out by the sun, retina decay. Blackened circles right in center view. Yet I still see colors, motion, and a shade of you. Took so long to get here, thought I knew where I was going. Straight ahead, horizons change, the sun never stops glowing. It was so bright for a moment, all the dreams at once were true.
Track 8 is another Ferrara original, Beyond 100, and the notes tell us that this is in 11/4 time. Everyone's favorite time signature. If you listen to the sax phrases, I think you can get the 11-beat idea if you think of it as 3 + 4 + 4. That helps me feel it anyway. The sax floats free after the phrase and repeat, and then Ferrara's off on a solo, which switches up to straight time. Let's check it out. On this one, let's check out some of Lynch's piano solo once he's got things going. And back to the melody from there with a skip in the record like ending Vamp. Track 9 is another Ferrara original, Over a Step, with 2 Ps. This one has an interesting split personality of funky and swinging. Ferrara starts it out over just drums with bendy riffs for the opening section. They're in 4-measure phrases, and the rhythm section joins in on the 4th time around. The middle section swings for 22 measures, and then there's a final 8 measures of the funky beginning idea. Lynch is up first for a solo, followed by Ferrara, and Farrell gets a drum solo on this one, so let's check out some of his playing. Ferrara returns softly, working up the volume back into just the funky sections of the melody to the end. And the recording ends up with track 10, Take the Coltrane, a tune by Duke Ellington from the album Duke Ellington and John Coltrane from 1963. It's a 12-bar blues, and the notes say that they purposely moved the first note of the melody from the upbeat to the downbeat to give it a funkier feeling. Let's check it out into the start of Ferrara's solo. Bluesy and playful, it's a lot of fun. Lynch follows with a little hint of straight note chaser in one of his lines, and Farrell gets to have some drumming breaks on some play around the melody phrases before a final time through finishes up the track and the recording. Anthony Ferrara branches out with a lot of ideas on Straight into the Sun Vision. Everything is still rooted in the jazz tradition, including old favorites from Miles Davis and Duke Ellington, and a 2-for-1 standard in Candy, all done in new, fresh ways, but Ferrara's original compositions have challenging ideas with changing grooves and tricky time signatures. He handles everything in stride, launching off into solos that always have a sense of discovery and take chances in their directions. The new, for us anyway, rhythm section matches his vision perfectly, with fine backing and exciting piano solos from Jesse Lynch, skillful bass work, solos, and nice tone from Carlo De Biagio, and precise drumming with excitement from Josh Farrell, handling the tricky time spots along the way. And let's not forget Ferrara's recording vocal debut here too, especially heartfelt on the title track with his original lyrics. It's an adventurous recording in a lot of ways.
Yeah, the old school sound of the album struck me right away. Ferrara has these really interesting, I don't know what you'd call them, sort of brief glissandos and slides to his solos that make his musical personality identifiable. He's also got a tone that comes to me from the 1950s. He sings well too, vocalizing on Candy and the title track, and he sounds smooth-toned and sincere doing it, but I really preferred hearing him on sax. The record is also recorded with startling clarity so that Ferrara's tone, and especially Josh Farrell's drums, like the cymbals and things like that, come up with an amazing crispness. I was zeroing in on the ride cymbals rhythms while listening. The band is filled out by Jesse Lynch's piano playing, also well captured and creative with the material he starts out with, producing lightly moving lines and some great rhythms. And I also liked Carlo Di Biagio's sincere bass playing, especially during solos. I took to this album from the first track, mostly due to its overall sound, but the playing is what makes me want to revisit it.
Yeah, let's see what he does next, and hopefully we'll hear more with this group because it's got a good energy together.
I thought so too.
All right, let's finish big like we have for the past few episodes with the Schapiro 17 from John Schapiro, Best Laid Plans on Summit Records. This also came out on May 8th, and thanks to Jim Ego at Jazz Promo Services for the info on this recording. John Schapiro studied at Brown University, the Manhattan School of Music, and New York University with Jim McNeely and Dino Ghiezzo, and participated in the BMI Jazz Composers Workshop, where he won the 2003 Charlie Parker Prize. He formed the Schapiro 17 in 2012 as a vehicle for his writing, with the band beginning to perform regularly in 2014. His first two releases with the ensemble, New Shoes, Kind of Blue at 60 from 2020, and Human Qualities from 2021, combined original compositions with large ensemble reinterpretations including a full-length reworking of Kind of Blue. 2/3 of the musicians on this recording have been with Schapiro since he got started back in 2012, and 6 more are on their first recording with the band here. So the lineup is conductor, composer, and arranger John Schapiro, the trumpet section Brian Davis, Andy Gravish, Eddie Allen, and Noyes Bartholomew. Trombones Alex Jun, Deborah Weiss, Andrea Newman, and on bass trombone, tracks 3 to 8, Walter Harris, and tracks 1, 2, and 9, Brandon Moody. Saxes and reeds, Ken Robinson, Nathan Bellot, Paul Carlin, and Rob Middleton, and Matt Hong on bari sax. On the piano, Simona Premazzi, guitar, Sebastian Noel, on bass, Bob Sabine, and drums, John Wicken. This was recorded June 23rd to June 26, 2025 at Power Station in New York City. The album was produced by Jamie Bejian, engineered and mixed by Fernando Lodeiro, and mastered by Oscar Zambrano. Large ensemble recordings are always hard to sample, and this is the hardest I think I've come across yet, for the sheer amount of complex arranging and endless developments that come along in each tune. The best I can do is give you a snapshot of interesting points on the way. The recording starts out with a Schapiro original, Ugly Chic. That's C-H-I-C. The notes say that this one has been in the band's folder for almost a decade. It clocks in at a whopping 11 minutes and 40 seconds, so this will be really hard to do much justice to with samples. There's a common thread of an undulating rhythmic riff throughout that the bass and drums get started and gets joined by piano. It seems like it's in a 6/8 meter, but I'm not really sure. Things get more ominous with the entrance of Sebastian Noel's guitar that will work up to a solo with horn backing floating in. Let's hear this recording get started. The solo builds and works to a clean break, and then there are new lines with bass and bass trombone that get more bone lines added on top, with more horns joining in as the arrangement builds. That leads to a trombone solo from Deborah Weiss. Piano and bass get a line started that leads to a building arrangement again, and a solo from pianist Simona Premazzi with band interaction. I found this part interesting, and for a moment it feels like it's about to take off, swinging over walking bass. Let's check out some of that section. Horn arrangement goes on to another bass and piano line that gets softer horn lines, and then a trumpet solo from Andy Gravish. A final full band arrangement that never forgets the rhythmic riff builds up to a solo low piano line ending. Track 2 is Herbie Hancock's Chameleon from the 1973 Headhunters album. If you know this tune, you'll know the funky synthy bass, and this version will surprise you. The opening is chilled out with lots of space for tenor sax from Paul Carlin. Let's hear the opening. Carlin works it into a solo with band blasts and some interchanges with Harmon muted trumpet. And Eddie Allen is up for a trumpet solo that includes a lot of half-valve ideas and rhythms set against the band. Let's join in once he's got it going. A full band arrangement works up with a lot of surprises, and the ending has final soft exchanges between Carlin and Allen's half-valved ideas. Track 3 is Horace Silver's Quicksilver, first recorded by the Horace Silver Trio in 1953. This is a really fun arrangement. The notes say that it has streamlined chord changes to leave the rhythm section and soloists a more open harmonic landscape. It starts with a familiar riff from the tune in offset layers of saxes. Then the melody phrases are spaced out over bass that sticks on a one-note idea, adding tension. Let's check out the beginning. As it works along, there's a short solo on Barry's sax from Matt Hong. The arrangement works into some neat tension-building close harmonies and some cacophony for a climax into a tenor sax solo from Paul Carlin. Let's hear that transition. He works up to some angsty cries, and then everyone drops out for Simona Premazzi to get started on a piano solo before things build up again. Things get really swinging for a full band arrangement, and Matt Hong is up for the final solo on bari sax before the ending. Track 4, Scott Joplin, going way back to 1909, his tune Solace. This has a charming start with interactive individual horn lines coming in. The notes say that Schapiro writes for specific voices, including Rob Middleton's tenor sax and June's trombone, alongside lead trumpeter Brian Davis for this one. I found the interaction here between sax, trombone, and then the building arrangement with muted trumpet a lot of fun. Middleton continues on, getting some bluesy ideas in his phrases. There's a full band arrangement to a break, and then a trombone solo from Alex June that really sings out. He gets a lot of time, and the arrangement is great too, so let's take a sample of that. There's a neat horn section solely from there. Then lead trumpeter Brian Davis does some fine high playing for a solo. The ending recalls the opening with soprano sax and individual horns. Track 5 is Sonny Rollins' East Broadway Rundown, the title track from the 1966 recording with Freddie Hubbard. Well, the original tune is more than 20 minutes, so this 7-minute tune version is short in comparison. Bob Sabin gets it started on solo bass. I'll start it a little way in when he gets it into tempo so we can hear the arrangement build around the familiar riff. Sebastian Noel is up there first for a guitar solo that starts out in the blues but branches into interesting harmonic possibilities. Next up is Eddie Allen on trumpet, and things get interesting again harmonically, and in the arrangement with mutes and flutes behind him. And Paul Carlin is next on tenor sax. Let's check out some of his solo. Things get quieter for Sabin's bass to bring in a new section that has a nod to Pent Up House from Sonny Rollins +4, and there's a break before the final section that builds up with drums and trumpet to the end. Track 6 is the Schapiro original Blues My Naughty Sweetie Gives to Me. This builds quietly and slowly with 2 blasts from the brass on the way. We can hear a little bit of it to catch the mood at the beginning. Alto saxophonist Ken Robinson gets the spotlight for this one. Let's hear a section with subtle horn line arranging behind him. After his solo, the trumpets have some attention-getting stabs into more mellow lines for the trombones and saxes, and Robinson has the final word at the end. Track 7, another Schapiro original, Best Laid Plans. The notes say that this title track grew out of an earlier composition that Schapiro discarded and rebuilt, keeping the melody while reshaping the surrounding material. The opening is fun, with alto sax and bass clarinet getting things going before the rhythm section joins in and then trombone takes over. The notes don't say who's on trombone here, but it's a fun solo. Sebastian Knoll follows with a guitar solo, all clean-toned now, not like the edgy tones that we heard earlier. Let's hear the ending of the solo where things get rubato with a dense backing arrangement. A bluesy finish, and then a new groove from Bob Sabin's bass for the next section with a lot of new developments to come. After a clean break, the opening idea returns, expanded upon with trombone and guitar joining in before the whole band finishes it. Track 8 is John Coltrane's Moment's Notice from the 1958 recording Blue Train, a relaxed feel for this at the start with drum fills and flowing horn lines. He's really hinting at and teasing with ideas from the melody. Deborah Weiss on trombone and Matt Hong on bari sax both have solos. Let's hear a little bit of each of them. The sound of the mutes cutting through and the backing lines there. There's a lot more to come in the arrangement with a powerful brass build-up and some great high-note trumpet lines from Brian Davis. It works back to a clear melody restatement, and then there are some simultaneous improvisations from sax, trumpet, and trombone into the final section. And the recording ends up with one more Schapiro original, The Uncluttered Mind. The notes say that this is straightforward and simple, and expanded minor blues. Well, that would be, relatively speaking, there's nothing really simple in the well-developed arrangements on this recording. Well, we get a cool bass ostinato to get things going, and the minor blues character is made known by a full band arrangement. Some unexpected rhythmic interactions happen briefly before a trombone solo gets going. The solos aren't credited for this one in the publicity notes, but let's check out some of the alto sax solo that comes up later. More exciting horn arranging is coming up into a bit of a mysterious section that has some rhythmic ping-ponging of lines like we heard before the trombone solo over the bass ostinato, and the bass walks it out at the end, finishing up high. Compositions from Scott Joplin, Herbie Hancock, Sonny Rollins, John Coltrane, Horace Silver, plus 3 Schapiro originals make a diverse pool of material for John Schapiro to craft his amazing arrangements. He writes with the personality of the soloists in mind, and the balance of individual voices and ensemble writing carries through the whole recording. New melodic, harmonic, and rhythmic ideas unfold continuously in the arrangements. There are no dull moments, and Schapiro is also skilled at using different tone colors, so we get a mix of woodwinds, including bass clarinet, and muted brass for timbral variety. All the playing, both solo and ensemble, is excellent. It's a hard recording to capture the essence of in samples or explain sufficiently in words, but you don't have to worry about that. Just put it on and give it the 76 minutes of your undivided attention that it deserves.
If you have that kind of attention span, because these compositions are highly detailed, and there's a lot of varied soloing in them, often separated by the brass section repeatedly coming into the spotlight. So we've got a lot of satisfyingly long tracks here, and that lets us delve into the material at some depth. And depth there is. A lot of the tracks have multiple sections, some, like Solace, changing to different styles. Now, the thing is, I know this piano piece, Solace, by Scott Joplin, but I didn't recognize it here. It's so completely changed in this arrangement. It's got some sassy blues and polyphony here that recalls New Orleans, though with a downbeat rhythm. I remember Solace, the piano piece, as being more of like a, not a calypso maybe, but an island sort of, rhythm to it, So you don't really get that here at all. Anyway, there's a lot of trombones soloing on the album by multiple trombonists, being this is a big band, and that was good to hear. All are satisfying. As they do for me, the baritone sax solos stood out, but the saxes are all collectively listed under reeds, so I'm not sure who that is.
Matt Hong on bari sax.
Matt Hong, okay. I enjoyed the ensemble playing in the brass section a lot. The star of this show, though, are the arrangements and the original John Schapiro compositions. The Schapiro compositions are complex and have a lot going on in them as far as form, style, and shape go, and the arrangements really make the brass shine. It's an interesting and compositionally slightly adventurous album.
All right, that's going to wrap things up for episode 259. We'll turn over another double digit next week with 260.
Wow. And
somewhere along the line soon here, we're going to cross over into 1,500 recordings, Mike.
Wow,
sometime
amazing.
In the summer. And we've got a lineup for episode 260 already. So what's on the classical menu?
Now, we talked about Alain Sariel playing mandolin concertos earlier,
right.
And I mentioned his Plucked Bach series. Now he's got Plucked Bach 3 out. I don't know how many more of these there are going to be. This might be the last one. Anyway, we're going to talk about that. I'm finally going to program one of these on the podcast because you can never get enough Bach, and we don't hear enough Bach on the podcast, really. Next, I'm going to just leapfrog into the 20th century, really the recent 20th century, with a cello concerto and concerto for orchestra by Witold Lutosławski. I mean, if we had started this podcast like 10 years ago, he would still be in the contemporary category. But I don't think this will be too much to handle, but they're a little adventurous, so there's that. The contemporary composers, we have our Osvaldo Goldijov and a favorite of ours, Peteris Vasks, the Latvian composer. We last heard his oboe concerto, which we really liked. And this is an album called Encounter. It looks like it's going to be clarinet quintets. There's a clarinetist, Chen Halevi, and the Arethusa String Quartet. That's on the Challenge Classics label. What do you got?
Over on the jazz side, we're going to start out with Spanish bassist Simon Osuna with a recording called Too Soon, Too Late. It's on the Fresh Sound Records label, and there's actually some information about it because it's on a Bandcamp page. I like the Fresh Sound label a lot, but they release recordings, and it takes a few weeks to find out anything about them. But this one we can get hot off the presses. Then we're going to go back to the Circle 9 label for a live recording, trumpeter Ted Chubb with Live at the Sanctuary. That just came out on Friday, the 15th, yesterday. And then one of our old favorites, trombonist extraordinaire Altin Senkalar with his new Positone release, Natural Rhythm. And this came out on the 15th as well. We've been following Altin's career as he rises up, and he's a follower of adult music on our Facebook page too as well.
I think I've got all the albums we talked about by him too.
Yeah, he's an exciting player, and I haven't even had time to listen to this yet, but I know it's going to be great, so I decided to program it.
I don't doubt it.
So all those recordings, classical and jazz, will be up on our Deezer playlist a few hours after this episode is published, and we'll put a link to it on our Facebook page as well. Any final thoughts this week, Mike?
I think I'm just going to go to bed and reset my brain, sort of like reload all the stuff that's in there.
You're looking a little sleepy, but you made it through okay.
It's been a long week.
Yeah.
So just got to sleep it off, I guess.
All right, we're going to have a lot of fun listening to music this week, and I hope that everyone has time to listen along. As always, we want to say thanks to Fast Signs of Staten Island for our glowing neon logo, and we'll be back again next week. So until then, keep listening, and we'll see you again next time.